Hello and welcome back to Game Brigade. I am your host, Brian, and on this show we do reviews, previews, playthroughs, and have conversations about your favorite board games. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. If you're watching the show today, you must be tuning in for the ISS Vanguard, because that's what we're covering. In fact, ISS Vanguard, I would say, is my second half of 2020 most anticipated crowdfunding games. I was going to say Kickstarter, but not quite a Kickstarter. I definitely would say Nemesis was my all-time favorite for 2020, but Vanguard is probably my second favorite. In fact, if you consider Nemesis an older game because it's already technically been crowdsourced once, Vanguard might take the top spot if we're going to be really picky here. What's interesting though is that both of them are from Awaken Realms, so you might get an inclination that I'm a bit of a fanboy here. I'm going to try to remove any biases I have towards the publisher and talk about what I think this is in terms of a good game, the gameplay mechanics, the miniatures, what pledge levels we should be looking at. So if you're watching this show right now, either you are someone who is probably dead set on backing Vanguard and you're looking for some affirmation bias, or two, you're not quite sure if this is a game for you and you want a little bit more information about what the mechanics are or what pledge level might be best for you. If either of those are the case, then this is a great show for you. We also have the Oathsworn giveaway still going on, so if you are interested in that, make sure you tune to the end of the show. But to enter, all you have to be is subscribe to the show and leave a comment on one of my videos. So let's go ahead and cut on over to Vanguard. Okay, so we are on day one. We are already over $1 million, technically at $1.2 million funded. In fact, fun fact, this is the fastest game funded on Gamefound in less than 3 minutes. It's also the first game on Gamefound. So if you are new to this Should You Back It series, almost every game, in fact, every game has been Kickstarter related. And Gamefound is a pledge manager ran by Awaken Realms. And now they are going to be trying to implement this new crowdfunding page, which I am very for. The layout, the structure, the design, everything has been very well implemented. Everything is very clean. So I am hoping that this puts a little bit more competition on Kickstarter, and I would love to see more creators using Gamefound. So let's talk about this game. First off, they have a lot of great content. We have some quotes here from some of the best content creators in the industry, and they all have amazing videos. And so I recommend, if you are still unsure after my video, I recommend watching these guys: Antlab, Dice Tower, Board Game Co., and Rolling Solo. I think they're all very good resources. Even Quackalope has a lot of information on this video, on this game, so definitely check those guys out. A lot of great content being created right now. So, what is ISS Vanguard? ISS Vanguard, I would say, is akin to Mass Effect in board game form. Mass Effect, if you haven't played it, is a PC or console, Xbox, PS4, or PS3 maybe, actually. It's been a while. Game that was taking place in space, but had a big emphasis on exploration, technology, meeting new races, and less combat oriented. It did get to combat at times, but it didn't feel like it was always combat. It was more about the dialogue and sometimes the story and the relationships that you formed. And I see ISS Vanguard as very much in that same realm, as there's going to be combat, but you're going to be making decisions. You're going to have a lot of branching paths, multiple endings, and not a traditional board game in the sense that you would appear to be on this. So we're going to talk about the mechanics a little later when we get to actually what they are. But we're going to first talk about, because this is the first thing, is the pledge levels. So right now they have 2 pledge levels. I suspect this will change. They're most likely going to have an all-in, and I would be shocked if they didn't have some sort of additional campaigns or missions that you can do, probably like side missions or something. But right now, we have the $99 core box, the Vanguard core box, and then we have the Vanguard Commander's Pledge. We'll talk about those a little bit more, of which one's different, and then talk about what you want to pledge in them. Below that, we have stretch goals. What I really like about this is that they show you what's going to be occurring and when and where they're currently completed at in terms of completion. These are daily unlocks right now, so no monetary unlocks, which is kind of unfortunate. I feel like a game like this would be awesome for a monetary unlock. I feel like daily unlocks means that the game is mostly fleshed out, and they're going to have a few things that are going to be community driven for additional ideas, but without monetary unlocks, I mean, because this game could go fairly large. This could easily be a $5 million game in the end of the campaign, 3 to 5. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so what comes in the core box? The core box is going to give you everything that you need for a 30 to 50 hour campaign experience. You're going to get the ship binder, which is going to be one of the primary aspects of this game. You're going to get a bunch of cards, which are going to be the main aspect of this game. 3 books, a few models, and 6 landers. The models are going to be for the crew, and of course you have the landers for the different types of landing craft that you can get. Down here, the ship book will contain the different areas of the ship, the ISS Vanguard that you're going to be accessing, the bridge, situation room, manufacturing, laboratories, and the hangar, as well as the barracks where you can manage your current crew. What I really like about how this game is implementing it is there are 2 phases of the game. You have the ground combat or the landing craft side of the game, where you're going to actually be exploring the planet or anomaly, whatever you're currently involved in. And then you have the ship phase, where you're actually going to be managing your ship, your crew, kind of like a lot of RPG based games, especially games like this, where you're going to have a breadth of crew. You're going to be recruiting new crew that are all going to be privates, and you want to take more people with you. You want to improve their skills, but then you're going to get injured. You're going to need healing, and so you're going to have this balancing act of taking higher end people, but you want to take some low end people because you want them to get more skilled, because you don't want to have a bunch of high end people. Then if any of them die, then you have no one for the late game content. I love that kind of that give and take, very akin to RPGs in terms of games like this. So that is awesome. So again, you're going to be managing all these different systems, and I love the way the way the folder works. So this is a perfect example. You have your cards, so your crew. You're going to slide them in here, and they will indicate whatever they're slid into. Will indicate what is happening with that specific crew member, what kind of skills they are. If they are in the medical bay, it says like serious injury, moderate injury, light injury, and you slide them down to each sleeve as they get healed. Very clever way of using a book, and being totally unique in terms of that. And then we're going to have the actual ship phase section, which is going to be in a book as well, very akin to, I would say, Jaws of the Lion, Gloomhaven, where the scenarios were in a book rather than having map tiles or a board that you're going to be filing out and could take a lot of time. This is going to be just in a binder, and you're going to lay it down, and you're going to choose on where you want to go. And then we have here the sections. So this is their way of how do you have more players than 1 or 2 players in a game like this. So each player will take on a different section of the ship, and these are different factions, you could say. The engineering faction, the recon faction, and each one has a specialty, and each one does their own thing. And so as you're playing 4 players, each person would take on their own role. And the way this game works, the main mechanic of this game, it's a dice rolling game, effectively dice management, dice rolling, where each player is going in each section is going to have their own dice, and as you move, as you do activities, you're going to have to choose which dice you want to roll, which means you're going to have to manage it, and depending on the result, if you get a miss or a success, can change the outcome of the current mission. You're also going to be rolling into hazard cards will be revealed, which require you to roll a specific result, which means you'll have to roll one of your dice, and you're basically going to be moving, trying to manage the amount of dice as you play. I will say up front, I think the gameplay The actual gameplay of this game is probably not the strong suit of Vanguard. If you're looking for a game to be like, this is amazing gameplay. So an example, Gloomhaven has amazing gameplay. It's why a lot of people rate that game so highly, because the actual mechanics and the gameplay is some of the best RPG dungeon crawling mechanics you can find. But the storyline is lacking. I think this is the alternative of that. While this game is going to be propped up and held up by its storyline and campaign, I do think that the actual gameplay mechanics might be a little bit lacking. Not unenjoyable. I mean, I could have a lot of fun doing this, but this is going to be carrying you for, as far as we're aware, because we don't know how much changes in the campaign, obviously, but just based off what we see in the current playthroughs of the first few missions, this is pretty much the meat and bones of the game. So here's an example of that binder where you're going to be, doing your landings. You're going to have your landing scenario. You'll have your people on these maps, and you'll have your actual minis on this book. And as you reveal an enemy or reveal a location, you're going to draw cards to, say what is occurring in that sector. I think it's a great idea. I definitely am really interested to try this. I haven't played Jaws of the Lion, Gloomhaven, but I know how many people were turned off by that idea. But then as soon as it was actually played, they're like, it's actually not that bad. So I think this is an interesting idea. So again, massive amount of cards. Let's talk about the second purchase though, the close encounters. So inside the core box, you're going to get your miniatures for all your characters. You're going to get, stuff for your landers. But all of the enemies, or a majority of the enemies, are going to be token or standee based. There's going to be some sort of representation of what you're facing, but it's not going to be a miniature. The Close Encounters expansion is basically giving you those monsters in an expansion form, or in a miniature form. So you can have all those monsters, all those enemies that you would occur or find, but they're going to be, oh look, it's Guilty Spark. Does that not look like Guilty Spark from Halo? So these are all just miniatures that you could occur or you could encounter along your campaign. Now, I will say, I would only recommend this if you are going to be a die-hard legacy campaign player of this game. I mean, not legacy, but like, this is a lot of gameplay. And a lot of times, some of these monsters you might not encounter till 20 or 30 hours in. And sometimes you might only see them for a brief bit, and you might not even encounter them. And this is just taking examples from what other games we have seen from Awaken Realms. With Etherfields and Tainted Grail, you sometimes will have enemies with their miniature that you pull out one time, and they're on the board, but you just don't encounter them. You just run away from them the entire time, or you just ignore them. And then that's it. Now that miniature's gone, it's back in the box, and you don't ever see that again. So that, based on the historical evidence of Awaken Realms games and the way that they play, I could easily argue that that could be the exact same experience we're going to see with these guys. So unless you're really looking for that deep, thematic, entrenching, like I want to be engrossed in this experience, I would argue that you don't need the miniatures. With that said, I'm backing for the miniatures because that's what I'm wanting. I'm wanting this engrossed feel of having everything on the board in front of me and allowing me to become part of the narrative, because again, this is a game not for the mechanics, but for the world building and the thematic feel. And I am a huge fan of space exploration games. In fact, I've got my little Normandy here on my desk chilling out with me. It's just part of like what I enjoy. So I'm in on the miniatures, but I don't think it's needed for everyone, and I want to make sure people are aware of that. So here's all the content again that we were talking about. We don't need to talk about that. So basically I've covered a lot of the gameplay and what I think about the gameplay. overall, I think this is a very incredible back. Here's an example of what your miniatures would look like on the board. It's just going to be a board. It's not like a standard board where you're going to be moving around hexes. It's like you're moving around these things. So it's very different in terms of how these miniatures are used. They're just literally representations of where your guy's at. But I mean, that's like every miniature game, right? So take it as you will. So here's some of that dice management we were talking about. I think what I want to go to now is cut back to me, and let's finish this conversation. So ISS Vanguard, would I recommend back in this game? Yes, 100%. I think this is going to be an incredible game, but there are a few caveats that I want to make sure I am clear, at least in my opinion, regarding this game. One, I have questions on whether or not this is going to be a good game at 3 or 4 plus players. Well, I do think it can handle multiple players. I don't know if it looks to me like it's going to be as enjoyable. There are times when I'm looking at games that I say, yes, I want a game with more people because adding more people enhances the quality of the game. But then there's times where I think adding more people to the game will actually detract from the quality of the game in terms of the length of turns, downtime, analysis paralysis. So let me give you some examples. One game where I love adding more players to the game because I think it enhances the game would be a game like Twilight Imperium. It's a war game. I feel like having more people, which allows for more social interactions and more encounters to occur between different factions and different players, enhances the experience. And while the gameplay time rises, exponentially with more players, I think my enjoyment goes higher. I think by having 6 players in Twilight Imperium is more enjoyable than having 4 or 3. But alternatively, when we're looking at a game like this, or say Tainted Grail, where you can have, by adding more players, you're adding on more time, but not necessarily increasing my enjoyment level. So for myself, I am looking at ISS Vanguard as either a solo game where I'm going to just enjoy this as a getaway for myself, or a cooperative experience with either one of my gaming partners or my wife, where we're just going to experience the campaign together. Because I think by adding more people to the campaign, I don't think we're going to be getting more enjoyment out of it. I just think it's going to add more gameplay in terms of length without getting that value. So that's my first cautionary thing about this. My secondary one, again, we've already talked about some of this, is the gameplay mechanics. I think the gameplay is a little light in terms of what I think a lot of people are expecting. This is one of the most hyped campaigns, I would say, of 2020. So many people have been waiting for Vanguard. And I do think Vanguard is going to be a fun game, but I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's going to be for a specific group of people that enjoy the thematic story-based elements and are okay with a little bit lighter gameplay in that regard. And I think this game is going to be kind of a chameleon, where it's going to have these beautiful miniatures and this beautiful board state, but it's not going to represent that in gameplay aspects. That might be hard. And again, I haven't played the game myself. I haven't been given a prototype copy for me to see this in person. I'm just relaying what I think based on the content I've seen. So that's pretty much my thoughts. If I were to recommend someone to backing this, I think I would have no problem. Oh, the final thing. I think, again, we've already talked about this, but in terms of what do I recommend backing, I think the core box, from what we've seen in past Awaken Realm games, the core box is probably a very, very safe back. And I think having that, which gives you all the gameplay aspects that you can need, is very, very good compared to, say, just the Commander's Pledge, which can give you a bulk of miniatures that might not actually give you the gameplay aesthetic benefits for the $80 increase that it is. Also, consider storage. Like, you're going to have to put those miniatures somewhere in your wall. So having a single box that can be stored entirely by itself is easier on your storage instead of having massive amounts of little miniature boxes that you have to also consider. So that's my thoughts on Vanguard. I hope I wasn't too hard on the game. I definitely think it's an incredible game. I just want to make sure people are not swept up by the hype of everyone talking about this game, because it's been the talk on all of YouTube, at least in our community here, for the last week. And I suspect for the next 2 weeks, it's going to be a lot of hype-driven information here. So I wanted to make sure people are just aware, pump the brakes. Looks like a great game. Everything is incredible that I can see. It looks incredible. The app looks great. The story looks great so far. Writing looks really solid. To me, everything is really hitting on point. But there are a few things to be aware of. So take that as a fatherly bit of advice, if that helps at all. So again, I appreciate everyone for staying with me and hearing me ramble and talk about video games, about board games. It's what I love to do. If you want to support the show, if you want to see me keep doing these, please hit that subscribe button and make sure you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. I want people, and especially YouTube, to know that my channel is something that other people should see. So if you want to support us, the best thing you can do is smash that like button. For the giveaway, we're going to make it simple for you guys. Just do hashtag ISS Vanguard and let me know in the comment section if you are going to be back in this game. I will talk to you all very soon.